Lee Marvin was not just a screen tough guy. He was the real deal. Before becoming a Hollywood star, Marvin served as a Marine during World War II, participating in the Battle of Saipan, where he was shot in the buttocks and lower back by Japanese machine gun fire. He was medically discharged with a Purple Heart. After the war, Marvin found his calling in acting and quickly became known for his gravelly voice, hard stare, and no-nonsense demeanor. In films like The Dirty Dozen and Point Blank, Marvin didn't just play soldiers or criminals. He channeled the discipline, pain, and hardened emotions he experienced in combat. He once remarked that acting in war films was nothing compared to the real thing. His performances reflected not just talent, but a deep understanding of violence, mortality, and brotherhood under fire. Off-screen, Marvin lived simply, avoided the glamour of Hollywood, and retained a soldier's practicality and stoicism. Charles Bronson grew up in abject poverty, one of 15 children of a coal miner in Pennsylvania. As a child, he spoke no English, only Lithuanian, and worked in the mines after his father died when Bronson was just 10. He later served in the Army Air Forces during World War II as a tail gunner on a B-29 bomber. He flew 25 missions over Japan and received a Purple Heart for wounds sustained in combat. His wartime experience lent authenticity to the icy resolve he projected in movies like Death Wish, The Mechanic, and Once Upon a Time in the West. Bronson's face, scarred and weathered, was a reflection of the life he had lived. Tough, relentless, unforgiving. He had no use for fame or press, rarely gave interviews, and preferred to spend his time painting and gardening. His quiet presence and intense gaze made him one of the most intimidating actors of his era. Bronson didn't need theatrics. His real-life scars did the talking. James Coburn had a sly smile and an easygoing charm, but beneath that exterior was a man of steel. Standing over 6 feet tall with a gravelly voice and penetrating eyes, Coburn brought effortless masculinity to every role. He was a martial arts enthusiast, trained extensively under Bruce Lee, and became one of Lee's closest friends in Hollywood. Lee once said Coburn was one of his most skilled and dedicated students. Off camera, Coburn suffered from severe rheumatoid arthritis, which at times left his body twisted and his movement restricted. Yet he endured the pain for years before discovering a new treatment that allowed him to act again. His ability to maintain poise, power, and charisma on screen despite debilitating pain is a testament to his endurance. Films like The Magnificent Seven and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid showcased his cool, under pressure, and unshakable presence. He never needed to shout. His strength was in his stillness. Steve McQueen, the king of cool, was as rebellious off-screen as he was in the movies. Orphaned at a young age and raised by abusive relatives, McQueen spent time in reform school before joining the U.S. Marine Corps. He went AWOL several times and spent 41 days in the brig, but later turned his discipline into drive. After leaving the military, he pursued acting and quickly rose to fame. McQueen performed many of his own stunts, including the legendary motorcycle chase in The Great Escape, and was a skilled race car driver who competed professionally. He collected guns, motorcycles, and fast cars, not for image, but because he loved danger. He refused body doubles, quarreled with directors, and demanded authenticity in every role. Diagnosed with mesothelioma in 1979, McQueen sought unapproved treatments in Mexico and continued to fight until his death. His defiance of authority, fearless spirit, and intense presence made him one of Hollywood's most enduring tough guys. Clint Eastwood is the embodiment of American ruggedness. Tall, lean, with a squint that could freeze time, Eastwood rose to fame in spaghetti westerns like The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, and the Dirty Harry series. But his off-screen life reveals just as much grit. As a young man, Eastwood survived a plane crash into the Pacific and swam over 2 miles through shark-infested waters to reach safety. That experience shaped his views on mortality and resilience. He later became a director and producer, often filming under budget and ahead of schedule, earning a reputation as one of Hollywood's most efficient and respected figures. Known for his calm demeanor, Eastwood seldom raises his voice and commands respect through sheer presence. He often casts himself as the reluctant hero, grizzled, weary, yet ultimately unstoppable. His tough guy persona isn't just acting. It's discipline, pragmatism, and a deep understanding of human frailty and strength. Robert Mitchum didn't care for Hollywood norms. He was arrested for marijuana possession in the 1940s, an incident that would have ruined most careers but only seemed to burnish his image. He radiated cynicism, masculinity, and danger. Mitchum had a background as a vagabond. He hopped trains across the country during the Depression, worked on chain gangs, and was once jailed for vagrancy. During World War II, he was drafted into the Army but received a medical discharge due to injuries. In film, Mitchum excelled at playing men who walked the line between good and evil. His role in Cape Fear as the sadistic Max Cady remains one of the most chilling in cinema history. He spoke in a slow drawl, never rushed a line, and exuded menace with minimal effort. Mitchum never pursued stardom. It came to him, and he greeted it with amused detachment, as though fame itself were a joke. Ernest Borgnine might seem an unlikely tough guy with his round face and affable demeanor, but behind that grin was a man with real grit. Borgnine served in the U.S. Navy for 10 years, including during World War II, where he was a gunner's mate aboard a destroyer. After the war, he took up acting and found his niche playing working-class men and hardened veterans. His Oscar-winning performance in Marty showed his tender side, but in films like The Wild Bunch and The Dirty Dozen, he played battle-hardened soldiers with a steely resolve. Off-screen, Borgnine was known for his loyalty, work ethic, and deep pride in his Navy service. He often visited military bases and supported veterans' causes. He once said, "I wouldn't trade my time in the service for anything in the world." His combination of humility, experience, and quiet strength made him one of the most authentic tough guys in Hollywood history. Burt Lancaster brought athleticism and intensity to every role he played. Before acting, Lancaster was a circus acrobat and gymnast. That physicality never left him. In his films, he moved with grace and power, often doing his own stunts. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army and performed in special services, entertaining troops. After the war, he became a leading man known for his commanding presence and moral complexity. In movies like From Here to Eternity and Elmer Gantry, Lancaster portrayed flawed but formidable men. Off-screen, he was politically active, unafraid to challenge the Hollywood establishment and support civil rights. He had a fiery temper, hated hypocrisy, and refused to be pushed around. His combination of physical strength, emotional depth, and uncompromising principles made him a force both on and off the screen. Jack Palance had a face carved from granite and a voice like gravel. Born to Ukrainian immigrant parents, Palance worked as a coal miner and professional boxer before becoming an actor. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army Air Forces and was badly burned in a training accident, which some say contributed to his distinct facial features. On film, he was terrifying. In Shane, he played a cold-blooded killer with such intensity that he won an Oscar nomination. In real life, Palance was equally formidable. He spoke several languages, lived on a ranch, and refused to conform to Hollywood expectations. He did push-ups on stage when he won his Oscar at age 73, just to prove he could. Palance didn't just play tough. He was tough, living life on his own terms and staring down age, injury, and expectation with a sneer. Telly Savalas was best known as the bald, lollipop-loving Detective Kojak, but his toughness extended far beyond the small screen. Born to Greek immigrants, Savalas served in World War II and earned a Purple Heart. He studied psychology and worked for the U.S. State Department before entering acting. His commanding voice, intense stare, and no-nonsense manner made him a natural for playing gangsters, cops, and soldiers. In real life, Savalas was fiercely loyal to his family, generous with friends, and unafraid to speak his mind. He mentored young actors, advocated for disabled veterans, and often used a celebrity to support causes he believed in. Though charming and charismatic, he carried an edge, an understanding of struggle and perseverance that added gravity to every role. His signature line, "Who loves ya, baby?" wasn't just catchphrase, it was an expression of strength through compassion. The mystique surrounding these legendary actors is a product of both their on-screen personas and their real-world experiences. They didn't just pretend to be tough, they lived it. Many of them grew up during the Great Depression, experienced war firsthand, or came from hardscrabble upbringings where they had to fight, literally and figuratively, for everything they had. This bred a generation of performers who brought a raw intensity to the screen that was unmatched. Their stories often intersect with pivotal moments in American history. For example, actors like James Stewart not only volunteered for World War II, but returned to Hollywood afterward, their reputations forever transformed. Stewart flew 20 combat missions as a bomber pilot and rose to the rank of brigadier general in the Air Force Reserve. When he returned to acting, there was a depth to his performances that simply hadn't existed before, because he had lived through the horror and responsibility of war. Even actors like Charles Bronson, who didn't speak much on screen, carried an aura that made you believe he could handle anything. Raised in poverty, he worked in coal mines before finding his place in Hollywood. That grit came through in every role he took, whether he was playing a vengeful vigilante or a quiet, efficient killer. It wasn't about theatrics, it was about truth. Then there's the case of someone like Steve McQueen, the king of cool, whose rebellious nature wasn't just a character act. He was expelled from school, spent time in reform school, and joined the Marines where he served with distinction. His penchant for motorcycle and car racing wasn't just for movies. He actually competed in professional races. His stunts in Bullet or The Great Escape weren't the work of doubles. They were his own daredevil spirit on display. The environments these actors thrived in were just as harsh as the roles they portrayed. Many of their iconic films were shot in remote locations, under extreme conditions, without the comforts of modern sets. Clint Eastwood, for instance, spent grueling hours filming spaghetti westerns in the sweltering Spanish desert. There was no digital trickery to rely on, just endurance, sweat, and an unbreakable will. Their toughness wasn't always loud or flamboyant. Sometimes it was the quiet resolve of Gary Cooper or the intense stare of Robert Mitchum. It was in the subtle choices, the way they walked, the way they lit a cigarette, the calm way they stared down danger. They projected strength without needing to say a word. And many of them suffered for their art. Broken bones, chronic injuries, and battles with addiction were all part of the toll that this hard-edged lifestyle took. Lee Marvin, for example, struggled with alcoholism most of his life, a byproduct of both wartime trauma and Hollywood excess. But through it all, he remained a commanding presence, never losing the edge that defined his characters. The era of the tough guy actor may have evolved, but its legacy lives on. You can see traces of these legends in today's action stars and character actors, men who channel the spirit of those who came before them. But what's often missing is the authenticity. You can't CGI grit. You can't green screen experience. What made these men great wasn't just how they looked on camera, it was what they had endured off camera. They were icons not because they were invulnerable, but because they overcame pain, poverty, war, loss. These weren't just plot points, they were realities. And that's what made their strength believable. When they walked into a scene, you didn't doubt them. You didn't question their authority. You felt it. Even today, their films remain powerful because they were built on something real. The scars you saw on screen were often real scars. The wisdom in their eyes came from living through things most people couldn't imagine. Their strength wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and psychological. That's what separates a truly tough actor from a pretender. And for all their roughness, many of these men had surprising depth. They were readers, thinkers, lovers of poetry and art. Charles Bronson loved painting. Steve McQueen was fascinated by Zen Buddhism. James Coburn practiced martial arts with Bruce Lee and delved deeply into spirituality. Their inner lives were often as rich as their outer personas were hardened. This complexity is what made them timeless. They were not one-dimensional tough guys. They were men shaped by life's hardest lessons, and they turned those lessons into unforgettable performances. Hollywood may never see their like again, but their impact will never fade.